Welcome back to another episode from Checking From Behind. Honestly, we're at the complete dead season of the offseason. Not a lot to talk about. However, though, Quinton Byfield signed a 5-year, $6.25 million deal with the Los Angeles Kings. When I looked at this, I kind of wanted to go in depth with it, like myself. So I looked at the deal and I was like, this is a great deal for Quinton Byfield. He's going to be a superstar in this league, but for LA's point of view, though, like, money right now looks great, but the second the contract's over, he's going to be a UFA at the age of 26. This is Quinton Byfield being like, listen, take me to being a UFA. I'm going to make a decision whether I want to leave LA or if I want to sign a contract extension the summer before he becomes a UFA.
I think this is going to become a more common thing with younger players coming out of their entry-level deals. You know, Austin Matthews kind of started that path where, well, Austin Matthews was a superstar from the moment he stepped into the league. So a little bit of a different case, but players are. I think this is a good deal for both players, like both sides. Like, I think it's a good team-friendly contract, especially if Byfield keeps built progressing the way he has been. Like, I could see him being like an 80-90 point player in the league.
Yes.
And, so that I have no issue with the contract or the length, but it's Byfield kind of taking a bet on himself. I'm sure LA would have offered him an 8-year contract if they felt he would have accepted it. You take the 5-year deal, walks you to UFA, you're still 26, you're still going to be in the prime of your career, hopefully, at that point. You can get a huge bag, and sign another shorter term deal like Austin Matthews does. But Toronto, he signs those 4 or 5-year contracts and resets the market every time he signs one of those new contracts. I think that's going to start becoming more and more common for younger players going forward.
I wonder if, so let's say Byfield keeps going on this trajectory and he's getting 80, 90, possibly even 100 points, let's say, and he gets to that age 26 season, he hasn't signed the contract extension yet. He can either A, test the market, or B, go to LA. He's going to do two things. Either A, completely get an 8-year deal, or B, like you said, he's going to do another 4-year deal, 5-year deal, whatever, for a pay raise. And then if he's still
he'll be like 32, 33 years old and still can get another big paycheck.
Maybe get a 6-year contract like Chris Tanev did at the age of 34.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know about that. But, for LA, like, Quinton Byfield, most likely he's going to be the number one center. I hope he is the number one center by the time Anze Kopitar retires. But because, Kopitar and Byfield are a pretty good 1-2 punch for top 2 centers. Obviously, Anze is still great.
Yeah. So
I think he's the 1C for as long as he's still performing the way he is, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. But, yeah, I think it's a completely fair contract. Both sides, I think it's a win-win. Maybe in 5 years we'll be talking about Quinton Byfield, the number one UFA available, if he doesn't re-sign long-term with LA. But we'll see. Anything could happen with this. But yeah, I have no issues with the contract.
Bringing up Byfield with being the number one center when Anze Kopitar does end up eventually retiring, the one problem I have with that is when he originally came into the league and he was on the Kings, he started off as center. He struggled. He went over to the wing last season. He produced mightily, and this kind of has me wondering if he should just stay at the wing even after Anze, and the Kings are going to have to go out and get another center.
Maybe, but they drafted him to be a center. So
this could be a thing, too, where Quinton Byfield stays on the wing, and then come through ability-wise, he can learn the game of hockey from a high IQ standpoint and an NHL level standpoint, shift over to center, too, for a developmental thing. This could...
I can't think of any other player you'd want to be the number 2 center behind other than Anze Kopitar. He's one of the best in the league, best two-way players in the league. Selke finalist seems like every year. Watch him, learn from him. If Byfield doesn't end up being a number 1 center, LA's going to have a bit of a problem because, they went from having crazy center depth last year when they brought in Pierre-Luc Dubois to, Anze's got 2 years left on his contract. I think he could possibly play till he's 40. You never know. With the way he plays, I could see him playing till 40, but you need a long-term number 1 center, and I don't see one on this roster outside of Byfield if he can develop into that. Alex Turcotte's still young. You never know what could happen with him, but I think LA is very dependent on Quinton Byfield being their number 1 center going into the future.
I mean, I kind of agree with you. You look at their center depth. Anze Kopitar, 36. Philip Deneau is 31.
Philip Deneau is a great 2C, 3C. He's also one of the best centermen in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the best pure face-off winners. A really great defensive forward, but he's not a number one center.
No, he's not. So they're gonna have their hands full. I mean, they have, like you mentioned, Turcotte. I honestly like Akil Thomas. I'm not saying he's a number one center, but he's gonna be a great bottom six guy. I think eventually he can slide into that number 3 spot. When down the line, when Anze Kopitar retires, Philip Deneau get into that age where he can't really produce. I think they'll have kind of a disappointing season. I don't mean to be negative if there's any LA Kings fans watching or listening, because I love you guys. I love Quentin Byfield to death, but there's just something about the LA Kings that screams might have a tad regression.
They're in a weird spot right now because they had that great run, like they back to back, like 2 cups in 3 years. Great core. I mean, they're still paying Drew Doughty a lot of money. They're kind of in a transition period now. And, when they made the playoffs a couple years ago, it was like, okay, the Kings in a few years are going to be contenders again. They're still not. I wouldn't call them contenders. Are they a playoff team? Probably. They've made the playoffs the last couple of years. They've lost to the Oilers last couple of years as well. I mean, with the way the Pacific Division is, I could see them and Vegas fighting for that 3 spot in the Pacific easily, and I could see LA being a wild card team, but I still think they got a little bit ways to go if they want to be taken seriously as a playoff contender.
I hope I'm wrong on the LA Kings missing the playoffs, because right now that's my pick as from last week's episode.
It could happen. I mean, this team, they show their age sometimes, especially towards the tail end of last year. They were kind of just playing not to make a mistake. A lot of dump and chase, a lot of trap, a lot of low-scoring games. They also didn't have really great goaltending last year either.
What's it looking like now?
Goaltending-wise?
Yeah.
They traded for Darcy Kemper.
Okay.
So they're hoping he can bounce back. Cam Talbot was, I think, good for them for most of the year. Then kind of at the end, he kind of fell apart. David Riddick's a decent backup goalie, but goaltending was definitely something that held them back a bit last year, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
especially for a team that they have a little bit of scoring issues sometimes too. So, yeah, they need to light the lamp a little bit more next year.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried about LA, but I think they can still get the job done. They have the top end talent to get the job done. If they get third in the Pacific or the second wild card spot, I think that would be a win in my book if I'm LA.
Yeah, I'd say they're like just below Vegas. I think
Yeah.
In that division. I mean, but Vegas. Injuries, they have a lot of players that are injury prone, and anything can happen really.
You never know. LA might win the President's Trophy this season for
I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. If LA wins the President's Trophy, I will buy you a Quentin Byfield jersey. Okay?
I love that.
Deal.
All right, deal. I like that. All
Okay.
right, sick. So moving on here to Jake Debrusk. Apparently, there have been multiple reports about him requesting a trade twice out of Boston. Boston fans are not happy about this. They're calling him a brat. They're calling him, you get to
He's
play
gone.
with Bergeron and Krejci. Like, I guess he went on a podcast, whatever, and stated it about where he wasn't all that too happy sometimes in Boston. And
who did he sign with?
He signed with Vancouver. Was it Vancouver?
Yeah, it was Vancouver. For some reason, I thought it was Seattle.
I was thinking Seattle too, but
No, they signed Stevenson.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 7-year contract, 5.5 for DeBrusk, I think is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a good second line player.
He would honestly could have this been a thing where Boston didn't want to trade him and like, you know what, we'll ride it out to the end of the deal and just let you walk. It could have been that. I'm just speculating stuff. I'm not saying exactly what happened because I'm not intel with the Bruins.
Yeah, I mean, I know he requested a trade a few years ago, but I thought he had rescinded the trade request.
I have zero clue.
Because I think the year before they went crazy and they won the President's Trophy and everything. I had like the best record in NHL history. Like I believe the year before he had asked for a trade, and after they went on that they were really good. He rescinded his trade request because they were great, and he I can win a cup here. I don't want to leave right now. I don't know, when did he say he placed the second trade request?
I don't know. He stated it on a podcast, and originally I looked a little bit into it, and then BR Open Ice and multiple other sources started spitting this. So I'm like, all right, sick. Well, I don't know why he would do it from Boston. I didn't really look into it.
Well, from what I can guess, just looking at the situation, I don't think a few years ago he was happy with how he was being used I think he probably thought he could play a little bit more, get a little bit more opportunity. I thought he was a pretty important player for Boston these last couple years. But I think he also wanted the long-term deal. I mean, that's evident by him signing a 7-year contract with Vancouver. He signed the longest deal you possibly could as a UFA. So maybe Boston was very reluctant to give him a long-term deal. They didn't view him as a foundational piece for that team. It's like, you know what? You're a good player. We're not going to give you an 8-year contract. We don't think you're that important to the team to keep you around for 8 years. And he's like, well, fine. You know, he's getting older. He wants some stability. I believe Vancouver also gave him a no-movement clause. No movement for the first 3 years, and then a modified no trade for the last 4 of the contract. So I think stability was a very important thing to him, and he probably felt like he wasn't going to get that in Boston.
I mean, I don't know if they offered him a contract, what the terms were. I mean, like you said, Boston could have said, we only want you here for 2-3 years. And like you said, stability is key, especially with a lot of these guys where when we've talked about no trade clauses and modified no trade clauses, it's not always about being on the best team per se. And for all we know, he could have the Florida Panthers on his no movement clause because he just doesn't want to move 2,500 miles.
Vancouver's a good team though, so it's not like he signed with a bad team,
right?
Or anything,
I mean, they're going to be a contender for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't get why Boston fans are mad at him. I mean, he fulfilled his contract. I thought he played his hardest whenever he had that jersey on. I mean, he did request a trade. I thought, all things considered, I thought him and the team handled the whole thing pretty well. Never really got out of control. You didn't hear reporters talking about he was like distracting the team. Like he told management, like, "Hey, I would like to be traded, but as long as I'm here, I'm gonna try my best, help this team as much as I can to win." Because I'm sure he knew he had a really great chance to win with that team, especially when they had Bergeron and Krejci there. I mean, sometimes things just run their course. I mean, I don't get what Boston fans are mad about with him. Yeah,
he didn't make a scene. He didn't quit on the team. He just played in silence, and I give him props for that because some players could have been, fuck this team, not give 100%, be like, last year my deal, I'm out of here. Like
Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Exactly. So, I came across this in my thoughts earlier this week about. Okay. I was thinking about the Nashville Predators. About which team is overhyped in the NHL going into this season. Because my answer is the Nashville Predators. I think
that's fair.
I mean, I get why a lot of people are high on them. Get Marchessault, get Shea, get Stamkos. But there's just something about the Predators that screams a little bit regression from everybody.
You think that they're going to... they didn't really lose anybody.
They didn't lose anybody and they gained. I might get fucking flamed for saying they might regress.
I don't think they're going to regress. I think they're going to be better. I think they're like a playoff lock.
I think they're a playoff team. I don't think they're a complete
I think
lock.
they can make it to the second or third round, possibly.
You think Western...
I think they'll at least win the first round, unless they play like Edmonton or something in the first round.
This might be a little bit of a hot... I don't know if this is really a bit of a hot take. Actually, it's not a hot take. But if Vancouver plays Nashville in the first round, and both teams completely healthy, no injuries on either side to anybody, I think Vancouver would win that series.
I think it'd be a lot closer than you think.
I think it could go 6-7 games. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be a 5 Vancouver, complete dominant series, but I think 6 games. I wouldn't be shocked if it went 7 games. Every single game was 1 goal. I still think both teams are neck and neck with each other in terms of where they are contenders-wise throughout the league.
I mean, it's fine to think they're overhyped. I mean, I think they got a lot better during free agency. Adding, Brady Shea, Marchessault, and Stamkos. I think adding Marchessault and Stamkos is going to improve their scoring a lot. I know they're a bit older players, but they could both still shoot. They could both still skate really well. They're both great players still. Stamkos, you're getting a Hall of Fame player, a longtime captain. That leadership group in that room is crazy.
It's nuts. It is nuts. I will give him that. Now, I'm probably going to be wrong with the Predators. They're probably going to put up 100 and something points, be second in the Central, and then go to the Western Conference Finals because I'm saying they're a 96-point team.
I think right now with the additions they made, I think they have a cup window now for 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
before Stamkos and Marchessault start to regress a little bit, because they're both older players, So, you'll get at least 2 or 3 good years out of both of them. I mean, you sign UC Saros to a long-term deal. You have a pretty stacked blue line, led by Roman Josi. You still got Philip Forsberg, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist. Like, they have a great group, and I think this team legitimately has a chance to win a cup within 2 or 3 years.
All right, they're going to win a cup this season, though.
This season?
No, I'm just kidding. I'm fucking around.
But what other teams do you think might be overhyped? 'Cause, Nashville, I think, is a pretty solid choice. They're the champions of the offseason. It's very easy to point as like, okay, they made these players, but they signed 2 old guys. What other teams in the league do you think are very overhyped going into this season?
I think there might be one other team, and I'm super high on them. I might have them going to the Cup final as the Devils. I think the Devils might be.
I just want to say, last week you were like hyping them up.
I'm still hyping.
You were hyping them up. I think it might be a little overhyped to say like, oh, they're going to win the cup next year. Like they're going to be.
They might.
They're back. They're back.
They are back, but
they definitely should make with on paper with the roster moves they made. Barring any crazy injuries, they should. I think they should be a playoff team next year.
I probably should have clarified this before we went into the segment. What I'm deeming as overhyped is a team where there's just like everybody's saying they're going all in. They're going to go on a miraculous run, and they're going to go deep. They're going to be one of the best teams in the regular season. Okay. I'm overhyping the Devils apparently because I said every single thing like that last week about them. So I'm victim to that. So, but yeah, there's the Devils. I don't know if there's any other teams, though, that I could think of off the top of my head.
I think Toronto's overhyped every single year.
That's fair.
I
wonder if Montreal fans are overhyping them.
Who's hyping them besides Montreal fans?
Nobody.
I think Montreal's getting better, but
all right.
Yeah, I think they're going to be better than they were last year. I think they're still a few years away from like being a real playoff team, a real playoff threat. I like what they're building in Montreal. I think they're doing a good job of building a really good, fast team who could score a lot of goals, but they still got a couple more development years.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I wouldn't say Montreal's overhyped. Fans are going to overhype their team.
That is fair.
We know very well with Chris. The Sabres are the greatest team in the world, and everything they do shouldn't be questioned, right?
Yeah. I'm probably going to get absolutely flamed for these first 2 segments.
I want fans to overhype their teams. Like that's what fans do.
Be optimistic about the season, unless you're a Flames fan,
or like a Blue Jackets fans. Like you guys are probably gonna suck.
At least with the Sharks and Blackhawks, you guys have Bedard and Celebrini and Will Smith, and the list goes on.
I think the Sharks are gonna get a lot better next year. I think they're still gonna be one of the worst, one of the lesser teams in the league, but I don't think they're gonna be nearly as bad as last year. If they are.
Did they even get 50 points last season? No, I think they're. I don't know. That's irrelevant.
I don't even think they won 20 games. They were bad last year.
I still can't believe we set the over-under the wins at 11.5.
That was you. As soon as you said that, I was like, they're going to get more than freaking 12 wins, dude. It's the NHL.
You know what? You're not wrong. All right. So, did I don't know if I asked you this last week or not. I might have. If so, I'll just completely edit this out of the podcast. Did I ask you who's more likely to not finish third in the Central, the Preds or the Avs? Or second?
I think we discussed it a little bit, but we didn't have like a in-depth conversation. Who do you have above them? Obviously Dallas. Do you think the Jets are above them?
Oh, sorry. Not third. Top 3 in the Central Division, Avs or Preds. Or do we think we should throw the Jets in that conversation too? Because apparently they're a forgettable team. So,
according to you, I think the Jets could belong in that conversation. They were last year. They were the 2 seed in the Central Division. They have a good team.
They do have a good team.
They just shit the bed in the playoffs.
Connor Hellebuck shit the bed in the playoffs.
The whole team didn't play well.
That is fair. He got held up to dry a lot.
Yeah, they weren't playing defense. Look at the amount of goals Colorado scored. They got lucky they won game 1, but they won 7-6. That's not sustainable hockey, especially against a Colorado team that will make adjustments on you.
So crazy. Georgiev allowed 7 goals in that game, or 6 goals, whatever it was, and then he locked in the rest of the series.
Yeah, no, Winnipeg, I think, kind of just fell apart.
Yeah.
In that playoff series, but on paper they should be a good team again next year. They have a good team. Regular season Connor Hellebuck is great. He's going to have to overcome his reputation he's starting to earn for the playoffs. I know he had that deep run, like, what was it, like 2019?
Yeah.
It was a while when they made it to the conference final. But outside of that, he hasn't really done much in the playoffs, just first-round exits. I think they made it to the second round in that playoff bubble year, but then they got swept by
Was it Montreal?
Yeah, it was by Montreal. Yeah, they got swept. I mean, yeah, but I could see them finishing in the top 3. I mean, I think that division, specifically with the top 4 teams in the Central Division, is going to be a bit of a bloodbath. You have, the Stars, who I think are one of the best teams in the league. You can't ever count out the Avalanche. Nashville got a lot better, and Winnipeg's still there. I think, honestly, it wouldn't shock me if any 4 of those teams won the division.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still gonna favor the Stars. I think they're the best team in that division, but it's hockey. It's an 82-game season. Anything could happen. But, specifically getting back on track to which team has the higher chance to not finish the top 3 in the Central, I'm going to probably say the Predators. I haven't seen them play with this new group yet. I know what the Avalanche are. I know what they're capable of, even despite their goaltending at times.
I think that Nashville is least likely to finish inside the top 3. However, though, it wouldn't shock me at all if those top 4 teams you listed off a second ago all finished with 100-plus points. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't at all. Players that have the biggest impact on their new teams, because I went into a little bit of thought of this at work because, frankly, there's nothing to do at my job right now outside of the first 3-4 hours at this point. So I thought about it a little bit, and this probably won't be a shock. I think it will be Jake Guentzel. I think him playing with Kucherov on that top line on the power play 1 for a full 82-game season, if everything goes right, I think Jake Guentzel could put up 100 points, could put up 40, 45 goals playing with Kucherov. I think it'd be great. But I mean, there's other guys like you mentioned, Steven Stamkos, Marchessault. I think Stevenson is overpaid, but I think you'll have a good season in Seattle. And the list just keeps going on and on and on.
Yeah, I mean, just looking through the list of signings, the players that I think are going to have a big impact right away on their team. I mean, I like saying Chandler Stevenson. Seattle, they overpaid a little bit for him. I mean, he's 30 years old, 6 points. He's a good center, though. Mm-hmm. I think they really, really, really needed secondary scoring, horribly. That was Seattle's problem last year, is they couldn't score. They also had Brandon Montour, so that should help with their scoring considerably, I think, because those are both power play guys too, especially Brandon Montour. I could see him quarterbacking power play 1. I think they'll both have a pretty big impact on Seattle right away. I think they'll increase their scoring by a lot. Look through the rest of the list. I mean, you can name one if you'd like.
Elias Lindholm, I think, will be good in Boston.
Yeah, I think he's fits the prototype of a Boston Bruins type player.
You know what might be kind of underrated? Victor Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner playing in the top 6 in Edmonton.
I think Jeff Skinner is going to be great on Edmonton because Jeff Skinner is at his best when you have someone who can feed him the puck and don't want him to play defense. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be playing with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl most likely in the top 6, and I think he could score 40, 50 goals this year if he's playing on the wing with one of those two.
If Skinner puts up 50 goals, that would be nuts. Honestly, I would be so happy for him if he put up 50 goals on Edmonton and they got first in the Pacific. I would love it.
I mean, I think that was an underrated signing. I think Skinner probably had a good amount of interest from teams, but it's kind of the same thing when he came to Buffalo and he played with Eichel right away. Mm-hmm. He had a 40-goal season. Skinner's the kind of player who feeds off the guys around him, and if he's playing with top-level talent, he's going to be great. I know he's a little bit older, but he cannot play defense at all. But Edmonton's not going to ask him to do that. They're going to ask him to score goals.
That's what they brought him in there for.
Yep.
I mean, granted, his defense percentile is at 0%, but it can stay at 0% in Edmonton.
Yeah, because if you're scoring 6-7 goals a game, who gives a fuck? Skinner, you got it. Skinner, just don't let him more than 4.
Wait. Are you saying Skinner scores 6 to 7 or Edmonton as a team? That might be a dumb question.
No, Edmonton.
Okay,
I'm at Stuart Skinner. Don't let in. There's too many Skinners. One team. So Stuart Skinner, just don't let in more than 3 or 4 goals a game, and Edmonton should win most of their games with the firepower.
Stuart Skinner might win the Vezina Trophy with that offense. They might control. Let me make it make sense.
His numbers will still be mid. I mean, he'll have a lot of wins, but he's not gonna have a 9 20 save percentage.
Let me make it make sense, okay? They are going to have the puck in the offensive zone so much that Stuart Skinner can fucking take a nap in the crease and have like a goals against average of like 2. But I don't like to measure goalie success off of goals against average. I'm huge above saves above expected and save percentage. Those are my 2 biggies. Goals against average doesn't mean fucking shit, to be honest with you. And wins. Fuck wins. Wins is the most meaningless stat in the NHL stat book, whatever. But I think Edmonton will be great. So we talked about Tampa a little bit, and I felt like a good debate to bring up is who was more important to the recent dominance of the Lightning, Stamkos, Vasilevsky, Kucherov, or Hedman, or anybody else like Braden Point, maybe?
I have the answer, Vasilevsky.
Interesting.
That dude was when they went to the 3 cup runs, I mean, that whole team was great, but they don't make it there without Vasilevsky.
Yeah, elite goaltending, honestly.
I mean, he, especially the year when he won the Conn Smythe, he was absurd. Like, that run he had, he was the best goalie in the league, I think, for those 3 years.
He was the best goalie in the league from 2019 up until that last cup appearance against Colorado.
I mean, that defense in front of him that he had helped a lot, but if you needed a big save, he would make that big save. Yeah.
I mean, I like Vasilevsky, but just for the sake of not going with the same guy, I think Stamkos is there. Now, I get in one of the cup runs, he didn't really play at all. I mean, he came back for a 1 shift or 2 shifts in the final, scored, which is fucking
legendary. He played 1 shift, he scored, and then he didn't play the rest of the game.
Legendary shit. But I mean, it's the captain of your franchise since the early 2010s. I think maybe 2010, 2011, something around
2000, there. I want to say 2008 first overall pick.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
So he came into the league, his second season scored 60. Get to the finals in 2015. Can't quite win it against the Blackhawks. Kind of have some seasons where you're really, really good. Can't get to the finals again. Then all of a sudden, I think what the turning point was with this franchise was losing to the Blue Jackets, getting swept.
Oh, that embarrassed them. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching that because, the Blue Jackets made some big swings at the trade deadline. They brought in Matt Duchene. They traded all their draft picks and good prospects away to go all in for that cup run because they knew that was going to be the last year they had Panarin and Bobrovsky. And they made the playoffs literally the last day of the season. They were going against, at the time, the greatest regular season team ever, and nobody was giving them a chance. I remember I was watching Game 1, and Florida was up Tampa was up 2 or 3-0 already, halfway through the first period. I was like, oh, this series is over. And then I saw the score was tied, so I put the game back on, and Columbus won. I was like, fuck, they got a chance. And then they kicked their ass in Game 2 and Game 3. Tampa tried to that. I remember that statement they put out on Twitter, apologizing to the fans. I don't know how it can't get any more embarrassing for them from that. Especially, I think them having to play Columbus in the first round again the next year in the playoffs. We're not doing this again. We learned this isn't fucking happening. And the first game in that series went to 5 or 6 overtimes. That game was crazy in the bubble, and Vasilevsky played out of his mind in that game. I mean, so did Korpisalo, but yeah, them losing to the Blue Jackets, I think, is the reason why they have their 2 cups.
I personally, what's going through my head right now is that if, let's say, they do end up beating Columbus in that first round, we don't know what's going to happen after that, if Tampa goes on a cup run or whatever, but I'm completely wondering if that was a complete mental shift, and maybe if they beat Columbus, they don't go on through. I
mean, I still think I think they still have a very good chance of winning the cup if they beat Columbus that year and going forward. I mean, look at the roster they had.
You know how sick it would. You know how sick it would have been if they went to 4 straight cup finals.
I mean, credit to the management for not really saying okay, I feel like a lot of teams after that happened would okay, we got to make a major move. We got to shake things up. Kind of like Florida did. It paid off for Florida
and Boston too.
Yeah, what major moves did they make?
They fired Jim Montgomery.
No, he's their coach right now.
Who? Oh, sorry, Bruce Cassidy.
Yeah, but everyone was saying, oh, they're going to fire John Cooper. They're going to make some crazy trade to shake things up to tell the players they aren't acceptable. What they did wasn't acceptable. They didn't do anything. And, I think John Cooper is one of the best coaches of all time in the NHL. So your credit to the Lightning for standing pat and not panicking, because it would have been very easy to panic when that happened. Very, very, very easy.
This is completely shape-shifting everything. I want to have a conversation about Sidney Crosby because there was this graphic I saw that in Crosby's prime and McDavid's prime, Crosby has the same exact stats that McDavid has through his prime so far. I know McDavid is the best offensive talent that ever graced planet Earth, but Sidney Crosby, personally, I think is top 5 and I think all time, and I think he's number 5 to be exact.
Who do you have ahead of him?
I have Gretzky, Lemieux, Gordie Howe, and Bobby Orr. That's not an order. I would have Bobby Orr 3, Gordie Howe 4.
I think that's fair. I mean, obviously Gretzky's number 1.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm trying to think of other all time. I mean, Sidney Crosby is. I think now these are a little bit older, and you see Connor McDavid is kind of taking over as like the face of the league. I think he might be a little underappreciated now. I mean, he had 40 goals last year.
Yeah,
the dude's not slowing down. Sid could still play. I remember his draft year. It was you could not escape the hype.
No,
you were probably. I was young when it happened, but you were like way too young to even.
I don't even remember
fathom it.
Yes,
but I remember. Yeah, it was a weird draft too because it was the lockout draft.
Okay.
So any team could have won the draft lottery. Really, any team had a chance. A lot of people think the NHL rigged it for Pittsburgh to win because they were like on the verge of leaving Pittsburgh. Like Mario Lemieux had bought the team and pretty much saved them. They needed the new arena really bad, and you get Crosby, you get the face of the league. I mean, Crosby's. I mean, when you look at top players of all time, you have to think like what they did on the ice and their impact they had on the game. I mean, everyone. The thing I like about hockey is there's no debate about who's number 1 of all time. It's Wayne Gretzky.
It's so nice.
Maybe one day a player will get into that conversation.
McDavid.
He's still got a long way to go, man.
I know.
I mean, he's great, but he's still got a long way to go. But
yeah, for sure.
Gordie Howe, the impact he had on the game, how he played, how long, he's just one of all-time greats. Bobby Orr, I think for his time, he was probably the defenseman ever. I think Nick Lidstrom belongs in that category as well for best pure defenseman of all time. I think Nick Lidstrom at least belongs in the top 10 list.
Dude, his run in a 12
he won 8 Norris trophies.
Nuts.
I think Nick Lidstrom might be like the best pure defensive player ever in NHL history. Like, period.
I'll listen to that. I like that. I like that take a lot. And there's still other guys, like you have Ray Bourque in there, but then like outside of defensemen too, like somebody brought up Dominic Hasek could be number 5 all time, and like
goalies, I don't know.
I don't like including goalies into the conversation.
I wouldn't put a goalie. I would separate goalies from that conversation. I mean, it's hard to argue with putting Sidney Crosby in the top 5. I mean, with the career he's had, he's super consistent. I mean, obviously he's not putting up the numbers he did when he was like in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And he's closer to 40 now. But, I don't have a problem with him being in the top 5. I think that list is solid.
Real quick before we hop into something else, I just want to read these numbers. So this is an 82-game era adjusted scoring pace through their first 9 NHL seasons. So Sidney Crosby, 1,134 points. Connor McDavid, 1,131 points, which is nuts. I found that completely mind-boggling.
Well, Sidney Crosby, his first few years in the league, he was insane. He didn't win Rookie of the Year, right?
It was Ovi, right?
Because Ovi had an even crazier season.
Didn't he have 50-plus goals?
Yeah, that's why he won, because he scored 50 goals. Mm-hmm. They both had, Crosby had an absurd amount of assists, but, Ovi won because he had more goals. But that rivalry back in the day, the Ovi-Sidney Crosby games, those were must-watch games. They were all nationally televised. I remember they would hype it up, especially when they were playing the playoffs. Sidney Crosby usually won most of the time, but just to see those two. I think the one time they both had a hat trick in the same game.
That's sick.
If you ask either one of them, they said there was never really anything there. It was just more of a media thing. But, those two players are, going to be tied together forever.
No,
Two players that were hyped to insanity coming out of the draft, and one is arguably the best goal scorer of all time, and then the other one is probably the most consistent player of all time.
If you include Sidney Crosby in the top 5 discussion, I think you should at least entertain the Ovechkin one.
Yeah, totally. I think Ovechkin belongs in that conversation as well. I think the top 4 are pretty rock solid for now. 5 is where I think the debate might be able to start.
I honestly completely agree with that. And even if you make a debate for Ovechkin, Crosby, Bork, Nick Lindstrom, and the list goes on. I'm probably forgetting a few all-time greats, but you can have anybody from 5 to 10, 11, and it can be interchangeable, even probably past 11 or 12. But just a discussion, you get the 5, and it's you can go this player. Oh, somebody else has a different player, and it just goes on and on and on. So I honestly find that's the one thing too about with all-time greats with the NHL compared to other sports. I think the NBA is kind of interchangeable.
It's ridiculous. There's 2 guys that I work with. Literally every week they argue about Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Guys, who gives a fuck? And I just want to preface this. These rankings literally do not matter. They do not matter. We have the Hall of Fame for a reason. In the Hall of Fame, they don't rank players.
Exactly.
If you have an exceptional career where your impact on the ice and to the entire game, elevated it to a different status, you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think ranking players based on numbers, it's fun for fans, but at the end of the day, it's literally meaningless.
The fact that there's some people that take that shit so seriously and is nuts.
I'm sure friendships have ended over stuff like that. There's intense debate. I think the worst one's probably with the NBA with Michael Jordan and LeBron. The NFL, it's getting pretty, it can be pretty bad depending who you're talking to about best player of all time.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it is Tom Brady, though.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
But
Patrick Mahomes will be number 1 by that.
I just appreciate that the hockey community doesn't have these kind of debates because they're pointless.
They're all
the hockey also has an undisputed GOAT, though. So.
The NHL also you have the top 4, like you said, undisputed. But after that, even top 5, it's you get to that 5th spot, like I said, no NHL fan or hockey fan
There's no definitive answer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody knows when they make this argument. It's you can have one player. Every other sport, though, go fuck yourself if they don't say the player you agree with.
I think a lot of people even agree that even if Ovechkin doesn't beat Wayne Gretzky's goal-scoring record, he's still the best goal scorer of all time.
He is.
Because that dude, I think that's literally the only reason he's playing still is to break that record because in games where he didn't think he was going to score, he didn't even look like he was there.
He just...
Especially in the playoffs, man was you know what? Cool, we made it. I just got to score 40 goals. And
he's fuck the playoffs, man.
Playoff goals don't count.
That's a good point.
He's got his cup. He's got his legacy. The only thing he's playing for now is to break Wayne Gretzky's record. Which,
all right.
You know what? I respect it.
I respect it, too. Keep chasing that record because he's going to keep playing until he gets there. All right, last thing on the agenda. We covered them a little bit last week. The Rangers, I got to stop doing this because we talked about it last season, hopping on the bandwagon. I'm not hopping on the Rangers bandwagon, but I think people listening...
I thought you declared on the Devils bandwagon
I am on the Devils bandwagon. Okay. So I can't get on the Rangers one, but I can be unbiased with saying that I think they're going to be good. President's Trophy, I don't know about. We'll see what happens, but this team... I really hope they do get over the hump or at least do something because they desperately need it. They haven't been to a Stanley Cup Finals appearance in a decade. They haven't won a cup since 94. Spent 30 years. New York is dying for it. The Rangers fans are desperate because with this core, Panarin, Sabanajad, you have Adam Fox, and the list goes on. Igor
Shesterkin. They have a good team, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
The only question I have, though, is Igor Shesterkin is going to be asking for $12 million contract.
To him.
I would.
Give it to him.
He's the reason why this team...
This team, they'd still be okay without him, but they're not in the cup conversation if they don't have Shesterkin. I'm sorry. That dude makes that team way better.
There's a few goaltenders in the league that make their team a straight Stanley Cup contender. Igor is one of them. He is the definitive best goaltender, in my opinion. I don't think there's really a goaltender that can scrape the surface with Igor not except anybody. Regular season, Connor Hellebuck. He just won the Vezina.
I think Swayman can work himself into that conversation. Now that he's the undisputed number 1 player in Boston, undisputed number 1 goalie, I think he's going to have a chance to really shine and prove that last year's playoff run was the real deal.
I hope so.
because I think he definitely has that potential. But Shesterkin, like, what you see is what you get. I know he struggled a little bit earlier in the regular season last year, but he was locked in for the playoffs. He's literally the only reason they had a chance against the Panthers in the conference final.
I'm telling you, man, that run that he had from the All-Star break up until they got limited against the Panthers, if he starts that run, even at Christmas, he wins the Vezina Trophy.
My issue with the Rangers is I don't know if they can beat a team like the Panthers. Like, if they had to play the Panthers again in the playoffs, even though the Panthers lost some players, the system they play is still going to be the same. Bobrovsky is still going to be really good. Can the Rangers overcome that? Because they couldn't last year.
They can't rely on their Jesus fucking Christ, I can't talk. They can't rely on their power play to win them games. Like, they have to do something 5-on-5, like we saw it against the Panthers, where the Panthers' penalty kill was locked down against the Rangers, and the Rangers couldn't score 5-on-5. Igor Shesterkin was on his head for every single game, even against the Hurricanes.
Didn't score until Panarin didn't score until it didn't matter.
Exactly, and like even against the Hurricanes should have won that series, and then Igor Shesterkin happened. Let's just be completely honest here.
That's my biggest issue for the Rangers is, can they play a team that really can hem them in defensively? And I think still the biggest threat to that team is the Panthers. If their worst nightmare is playing the Panthers in the playoffs.
Personally, I think that if the Panthers somehow, let's say both teams make the playoffs, they don't face each other in the playoffs. If the Panthers somehow do not meet the Rangers in the playoffs and the Panthers get eliminated before the Rangers, I think the path to the Cup for the Rangers is almost certainly clear.
Looking at the East, in the Metropolitan, Carolina's still there. Mm-hmm. I think Carolina, they're another team that's very disciplined defensively. Carolina seems to get unlucky every year, and they kind of have some of the same issues the Rangers have. Is the scoring disappears when they need it to be there. They ran into 2 years in a row. They ran into goalies playing insano mode like Bobrovsky and Shesterkin. But I think a team like the Hurricanes can still beat the Rangers. I think if they had to play the Devils in the playoffs, that'd just be a scoring contest. Mm-hmm. It'll be a high scoring, but I think Rangers edge them out just due to goaltending. If they had to play a team like the Islanders, any of the wild card teams, I think they'd steamroll them.
Yep.
So, I think there's only really a couple teams. I think Boston might give them a hard time, too.
Boston gives everybody a hard time. Even if they lose a series, they'll go to 6-7 games.
Yeah, but I still think the Rangers' biggest fear is playing the Panthers. I think if they don't have to play the Panthers, I think there's a very realistic chance for them to make it to the Stanley Cup final.
Possibly win the entire thing, but knowing the Rangers, you guys will be let down since 94.
Anything can happen, but...
Anyways, that's going to be the end of today's episode. If you guys have been listening on Spotify and Apple, head over to our YouTube. And if you guys are on YouTube, hit the notification bell, subscribe as well. Head over to our Discord. We talk hockey and anything 25-8. So again, thank you guys for being here. We'll see you guys in our next episode.